Good morning, everybody. Welcome to South Church. I'm Reverend Ellen Quaadgras, minister at South Church in co-leadership with Kirsten Hunter, our director of Lifespan Ministry, and in shared ministry with all of you. Welcome to South Church, to all of you online, to all of you here in the room together. Welcome to this place and time in which you are invited to let go, in the words of Reverend Scott Taylor, of those worries that push you into the future. Let go of regrets that pull you into the past. We have a moment now to let go of judgments that focus on what's missing rather than on what's being offered. Place to let go for a time of those perfected plans that blind us to the wildness of the world. It's a time to let go so you can be here, so you can notice, pay attention to the stillness and the beauty of simply getting to be. Our theme this month is paying attention, and today's service is inspired by Passover, which begins this week. We are reflecting on the narrow place and the long road to freedom, how liberation often begins well before the way ahead is clear. I'm grateful to be here today with Catherine Errecart, our worship associate, with Susan on piano and Jonny and Cathy Okhuysen offering our music, with Ben and Jen making sure we are accessible online. Kirsten will be offering our Time for All Ages, after which our youngest are invited downstairs for religious education. And all of us, after the service, are invited downstairs for coffee hour, where you will have a chance to ask someone you do not know well a question. For example, at what point do even New Englanders start to feel resentful about cold weather in March? At what point are we allowed to confess that we are taking this personally? So you can talk about that or other things. I have a couple of announcements. Every fifth Sunday, we are sharing a few important pieces of community information. So I want to let you know that fire exits are there and downstairs to the left. It is not there. Don't go there. Go there or there or there. We have a defibrillator in the narthex. I also want you to know that we have a discretionary fund available for those going through a hard time. If you are struggling with rent, utilities, groceries, or another urgent need, please reach out to me or to Kirsten. That fund exists so that no one has to deal with financial hardship by yourself. And a couple things from your order of service. Well, first of all, there's all kinds of wonderful things happening at South Church. I encourage you to look through your order of service. I want to lift up particularly right after service, Janet Pulaski and Susan Treelevin are calling all with memories of South Church that are not recorded in your annual reports, in our annual reports. So they're going to be downstairs. They'd love to hear your stories of South Church. Janet is writing a book, and she'd love to hear it. Also, postcard writing with social justice. Join members of the Social Justice Associates during coffee hour to write postcards to your representatives about current local, state, and national issues. It's a great way to make your voice heard and make a difference. We have a couple of other announcements, one from our youth group.
Just to let everybody know, after worship, Senior Youth is having a sale downstairs selling coffee, tea, and chocolate bars. So make sure to come downstairs after worship and support Senior Youth's trip to New Orleans.
Hi, Kirsten. We are very excited to start talking about flowers in spring. Right there. Thanks, Kirsten. We're very excited to talk about flowers in spring. I don't know if you guys were at the No Kings rally yesterday, but we saw some tulips and things starting to bud, and we're getting very excited. But we're here to talk about the 37th annual Pocket Garden Tour that's going to be taking place Friday, June 19th and Saturday, June 20th in the South End neighborhood. We need 78 volunteers. I am the volunteer coordinator. This, of course, is Robin. You want to say your role?
Oh, I was one of the scouts, and I am up here to call your attention to your order of service. One of the pages has a QR code at the bottom, and there's also a URL address that you can type in and sign up today if you want. We already have about 20 people, but as Jenny said, we need 78 people to spend 2.5 to 3 hours sitting in a garden. What a lovely way to help the church out. Thank you.
And we will be starting to table starting next Sunday, every Sunday until the tour. And we will be doing blooms, which is a way to honor or in memory of or in honor of somebody, and also cookies, the most important part.
And just one FYI about Pocket Garden Tour this weekend. It is the same weekend as Pride. So if you are planning to engage with the Pride festivities, sign up for the Pocket Garden Tour in the Friday morning shift, and you can do both. And that will be great. Our Friday afternoon shift.
Or Saturday morning. Just a quick announcement about Music Sundays coming up May 3rd. And I'd love as many people to be part of this as possible. I know there are more singers among you than who have been participating in choir, and I won't take it personally, but I will say we have lots of opportunities. We have a Tuesday evening rehearsal at 6:30, a Friday morning rehearsal at 11, and I even make other times for folks who can't even make those. So come sing. We've got a lot of great music. Still getting used to this, but this will be our last Music Sunday and our last Sunday with our lovely Susan Adams. So you get a chance to, yes. We are going to celebrate her big time, but you get a chance to participate with her, spend some time with her if you come and join choir. And band, play an instrument, come join the band. We'll also be playing. If you're a dancer or theatrical in any way, we're going to get some movement happening. And if you're crafty, we have a props and costumes and scenery workshop happening this coming Saturday from 2 to 5 downstairs. Lots of things. Thanks.
Sounds like it's going to be great. So now we begin our service, as we do every week, by naming that we gather on the homelands of the Abenaki and Pennacook peoples, whose presence is not only past, but present. We pay attention to resist forgetting. It is to notice the land, the water, the long memory of a place, and the people whose relationship to it began long before us and continues still. May this acknowledgement widen us, soften us, and help us walk that long road toward freedom with more humility and care.
This reading is by Elena Westbrook. Sometimes the only thing we can do is be still for a moment to remind ourselves what is real. The sun that rose this morning, the dirt under our feet. This hour, just try to be present in each moment as it unfolds. Your simple attention is what makes these moments holy. Please join in reciting our mission statement found in your order of service. You can rise if you are able. At South Church, we nurture spiritual growth through worship, learning, and community. We celebrate the worth and dignity of all people, and we inspire one another to act on our faith in the larger community. When I was a junior in college, I studied abroad in Florence, and I lived with 8 other American women. It was crowded, chaotic, and memorable. 2 roommates slept in a makeshift bedroom carved out of our living room. The kitchen barely fit 2 people, and someone was always coming and going, including various Italian boyfriends. For 5 months, there were 9 of us under that one roof. Me, Angela, Elizabeth, Emma, Jen, Jess, Janine, Joanne, and Rachel. And it was Rachel who rubbed me the wrong way. Rachel was studying to be a fashion designer. She cared a lot about how she looked, and she was not shy about standing out. She was ambitious, she had opinions, and what unsettled me most was that she could disagree with you very directly without apology. At the time, I had inherited a somewhat narrow idea of womanhood, that women keep the peace and make their own needs small, that they're loved for being easy, accommodating, and selfless. So when Rachel spoke openly and did not seem all that concerned with keeping the peace, I took that as a flaw. I thought she was self-centered, maybe unkind. That was the story I told myself anyway. So after a few prickly encounters, we kept our distance. I cannot point to one moment that changed things, but something did. Maybe it began with breakfast at Tiffany's. We had one dubbed Italian DVD in the apartment, and Rachel and I were the 2 who watched it the most. There's a special kind of kinship built by sitting on the same couch for long afternoons watching Italian Audrey Hepburn. Maybe it was getting ready for Carnival, when Rachel brushed glittering blue eyeshadow onto all of us and made the day feel brighter, bolder, less ordinary. Over time, I began to see something I had missed at first. Rachel's way of moving through the world was not just self-assertion. There was generosity in it too. My view of her widened. What I had first experienced as abrasive began to look in part like freedom. Not freedom from caring, but freedom from shrinking. We remained very different people, but I came to respect her deeply and genuinely enjoy her company. I've noticed this pattern repeating in my life. Sometimes the women I resist at first are the ones who ultimately widen what feels possible. They are making space for themselves to live more fully in the world, and in the process, making space for me to do the same. Please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn, One More Step, number 168 in the gray hymnal.
One more step.
Okay, so I have an old story to tell today, and anyone who would like to hear it from a little closer up is welcome to come forward. It's a story related to this stuff. Have you ever seen this before? It looks like a giant cracker for a really big piece of cheese. Yeah, I'm going to tell you about it, and then you can eat some of it if you want. And if any of you are gluten-free, I'm going to give a mom a job. This is for anyone who can't have gluten. Hey, they have gluten-free matzah now. Did you know that? Of course they do. Okay, so this is a story that is from the Torah, which is the Jewish holy book, which overlaps with the Old Testament. The Torah is the first 5 books from the Old Testament. And this is from the book of Exodus. This is a story from thousands of years ago. And it's a story from an area of the world that we now call Egypt and Israel and Syria and Iran and the Middle East and the northwest corner of Africa. And that is a place, especially around the Nile River Valley, that is sometimes referred to as Mitzrayim, the narrow space, the narrow place, because the geography of the Nile River Valley is narrow. But Mitzrayim is an interesting word because it refers to that place. It also refers to a metaphorical narrow place in life. And this story is about that place and about a narrow place in life. The story is about people moving through a challenging moment. So, what started off over a long period of time, I'm going to bring us in to a time when there is a pharaoh in charge in this area of Mitzrayim, and this pharaoh is a bit of a tyrant. Actually, he's a lot of a tyrant. He is a pretty cruel person, and he's especially cruel to a group of people who are Jewish. And those people he enslaves. He kind of tricks them into building walls around his city and closes them in and makes them work for him for no money and with very little care. They are forced to live their lives rushing and working very hard. And in fact, this thing that I'm holding in my hand was a food source that they ate often during that time. They did not have enough time while they were enslaved to raise their bread, to make leavened bread, to use yeast to make nice fluffy bread. They could only cook quickly. And so this kind of bread was a food that they used often. It's called matzah. And these people who were enslaved believed through their faith that they would become free. There was a prophecy in their faith that after a long period of torment, they would become free. And they believed it so fervently and with such stubborn resolution that they kept trying and trying to find that way. And there was a person named Moses. Have you ever heard that name? Yeah, and Moses was a Jewish person, but he actually had been hidden by his mother, sent down a river, adopted by the Pharaoh's daughter. So Moses had a connection to the Pharaoh, and he could go talk to the Pharaoh, this tyrant who had enslaved his people. And Moses went to the Pharaoh and he said, "You should free my people." And the Pharaoh said no. And this prophecy said that there were going to be plagues if they weren't freed. And the Pharaoh didn't believe it. And actually, that's what happened. Plague after plague started to happen in this place. Crazy things like toads, lots and lots and lots of toads coming and destroying the crops. Could you imagine? Also, lice. People started being infested with lice. Also, flies. Lots and lots of flies started to come in. Can you imagine if this is happening? If you're the ruler of the country and all of a sudden plague after plague, these waves of of really bad conditions start kind of moving through. And each time Moses would go to the Pharaoh and say, "Let my people free," and he would say no. And there were 10 plagues all told. After the flies, the livestock got sick. After the livestock got sick, people started to have sores. There was hail falling from the sky. There were locusts, dark storms, and finally, the most horrible part of it, children started to die. Firstborn sons started to die. And the Pharaoh, in desperation, after the last of these 10 plagues, told Moses, "Okay, you can be free." And Moses knew that the Pharaoh was desperate and that decision he was making might not last. So he ran to his people and he said, "We can go. Let's go now." And they made one last batch of this unleavened bread, or grabbed it up and took it with them. And they ran from the city. And they ran to the Red Sea, which was nearby. And as they were running to the Red Sea, sure enough, the Pharaoh changed his mind, and he sent his people, his soldiers, after the Jewish people who were escaping. And they were running after them, and the people thought, "What are we going to do? We're coming up to the sea. We're not going to be able to get across." And as the story goes, Moses somehow made the sea part with his staff. The water went away, and the people were able to escape across to freedom. And after they got across, the chariots of the soldiers were chasing them, but the water came back in. And the chariots drowned, and the people made it to freedom. And there, they had to live for quite a long time in the desert with very little food, eating matzah. And it was a hard struggle. It was hard to make the decision to go. It was scary. They didn't feel sure they would make it. It was hard to get through that narrow passage where the water receded. And it was hard on the other side. But they decided it was worth it to try. And that lesson is something that Jewish people try to remember every year during this time of Passover, which reflects on that story, and a part of the way they reflect on it is by eating matzah. And one of the cool things about matzah, when they're eating matzah together, is they pass pieces to each other to remind each other that a part of the fight for freedom is staying together, is giving to each other, is looking out for each other. And so if you would like to try some matzah, I will give you some, and you can try it. It tastes like a cracker. You don't have to try it, but if you want, you can. Like a cracker, yeah. And after you get your piece of matzah, we're going to sing you a song. Are you ready for a song? And you guys can head down to RE.
As part of our larger mission of community care, each month we share our collection with a group doing work that aligns with our values. In the months with 5 Sundays, the board has approved the use of the entire collection plate on the last Sunday toward paying down the principal on a loan we took out to upgrade South Church and the Meeting House. A small group of South Church members has offered a $3,000 matching challenge to the congregation. For every dollar collected from the congregation during the 5th Sundays in 2026, like today, this group will match the collection dollar for dollar up to $3,000. You can contribute directly to the plate through the South Church website or by using the QR code printed in the order of service.
when we share in love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
Let us gather our hearts and minds in a spirit of prayer or meditation with these words from the Reverend Michelle Collins. Ground of all being, in this room and beyond it, we are learning to see each other. Not the quick assessments, not the categories, but the full, complicated truth of each and every life. Help us offer the gift of undivided presence, to listen without planning our reply, to make space for stories that take time to unfold, to ask, who's missing from here and why? When we accompany those in pain, keep us from the tyranny of fixing. Teach us to stay while the crisis passes by, to show up in the unglamorous middle. May we become communities where every voice matters, where margins become centers, where attention itself is love made visible. May it be so. Amen. In the music that follows, I invite you to take time to reflect on your own joys or sorrows or whatever you are holding in your heart. And if you would like to come forward and light a candle for those joys, sorrows, or hopes, you are invited to do so. May each know that you are held, your fear, your sorrow, your hope, your light. May each know that you are held in this wide circle of care. So this coming week, Jewish people all over the world will be telling a story. A very old story, maybe the oldest story many of us know, even if we know it only in parts. It's the story of Passover, begins April 1st, the story of the Exodus. We heard Kirsten tell it a moment ago, but it never gets old, so you're going to get a summary now, too. It's a story that begins in Egypt, where the Hebrew people are enslaved under this Pharaoh, this tyrant, where they're living under harsh conditions. Their lives are controlled. Their children are not safe. And when their suffering rises up before God, Moses is called to tell Pharaoh to let them go. Pharaoh predictably refuses. Not just once, not twice, but again and again. His heart is hard. He will not budge. So disaster comes, disaster after disaster, plague after plague, frogs, gnats, flies, locusts, hail, darkness, and death. Finally, fed up with the turmoil, Pharaoh says, "Okay, fine, go. Get out." And they do. Fast now, leave, no time for the bread to rise. They go, they move, they head toward freedom. But Pharaoh is fickle. He changes his mind, sends his army after them. And when these fleeing people arrive at the sea, at this immovable barrier with roiling waters ahead, soldiers behind, no path forward, danger closing in, all seems lost. Except that when fear must have been rising, when a terrible end seemed certain, somehow, someway, in that great mystery at the heart of the story, Moses raises his staff and those waters part, a path opens, the people cross, their oppressors do not. The people make it, their oppressors are foiled, there is success and relief and deliverance. That's the part of the story most of us already knew bits and pieces of. It's the part you'll hear at a Seder if you go to one. Dramatic, memorable, cinematic. But escape is not the end of the story. It's just the end of the first part. I'll get to that second part in a minute. But first, I want to start with where they started. In Egypt, in that narrow place that Kirsten mentioned, and I heard in a sermon by Reverend Larry Pierce. In the Jewish tradition, Egypt is sometimes also called Mitzrayim, the narrow place, the place of bondage, the place of very few options, a place of constriction. It's small, it's tight. That narrowness feels painfully familiar for our time. There are narrow places that are literal, places where people are hemmed in right now by occupation, by bombardment, by fear, by borders, by walls, by separation. There are narrow places that are cultural, whole ways of seeing shaped by fear, by control, by the old temptation to secure ourselves at someone else's expense. There's a whole inherited imagination that keeps us asking to believe that safety can be built through exclusion, through force, through the narrowing of who counts. And there are narrow places that are personal, spiritual, relational, places where our hearts grow tight, where our thinking gets cramped, where the judgments and stories we tell ourselves start to limit us and our relationships with other people. Katherine offered a vivid example this morning about her roommate, Rachel, who rubbed her the wrong way, who was all the things Katherine was taught not to be. So what she saw at first looked like a flaw. That was the story that played in her mind. But over time, Katherine's view widened. What had felt at first abrasive began to look in part like freedom. Not freedom from caring, as she said, but freedom from shrinking. I love that phrase. Freedom from shrinking. And as she got to know this woman, the story Katherine had been telling began to change. Sometimes the narrow place is in the stories we've inherited, the expectations we didn't choose but absorbed anyway, cramped ideas about who other people should be, cramped ideas about who we're supposed to be. But freedom is possible. So yes, the narrow place can take many forms. It can be literal, it can be cultural, it can be personal. But once we begin to see all the ways any of us can be subject to it or suffer from it, we also have to see something else. Not everyone stands in the narrow place the same way. Not everyone holds the same power within it. Not everyone faces the same cost. As Kirsten reminded me the other day, power matters. In conversations with others too, here's a picture of how that looks worldwide. Palestinians know one kind of narrowness: occupation, bombardment, and the daily constriction of their lives. Israeli civilians know another: fear, grief, and the pressure of living inside a militarized reality. Iranian civilians know yet another: repression, threat, and now war. But none of that is the same as the cramped imagination of those in power, for whom force still looks like wisdom. These narrow places are not all the same. So while all of us are being formed inside systems of fear and constriction, its impact is different for different people. Some are crushed by those systems, some enforce them, some are protected by them in ways they may not fully recognize, and some move uneasily between those different roles. And seeing that, too, is part of paying attention. Noticing how power works, noticing who gets hemmed in and who's doing the hemming. Noticing who decides what happens and who pays for those decisions. Noticing who's told there's no choice and who gets to call violence inevitable from a safe distance. That's all part of what paying attention asks of us and what Passover invites us into: seeing more truth. But that's not all of it. The second part of this sermon is not just what happens to people who have lived too long in a narrow place, but what becomes possible when they really start to see it. About what happens when they are invited to more freedom, but are first confronted by this intimidating, roiling, and apparently impassable sea. In that same sermon from Reverend Larry Pierce, he reminded me of an old midrash about the crossing of the sea that says the waters did not instantly part when the Hebrew people arrived and Moses raised his staff. At first, everyone just stood there on the shore, arguing with each other. And the waters did not just magically open up while people stood around waiting for a clear map or a guarantee, or while debating where such a map would come from. In this midrash, the waters parted only when someone stepped in. And he didn't just step into his ankles, didn't just step into his waist, and didn't just step into his shoulders. He was up to his neck in danger before the waters finally receded enough for a path to appear. I love that image because it does not say the path must become visible before we walk. It says sometimes we walk and then the path emerges. Another important angle on paying attention. That spiritually speaking, it's more than just waiting and watching. It's a way of looking and seeing what's real so we can respond, so we can step, so we can refuse the lie that when things are unsure, we're just stuck. Once we take a step, other things begin to happen too. Other people come alongside. New courage grows in the heart. New possibilities open that we could not have predicted. I think of all those people who stepped out of their houses yesterday to go to a No Kings protest, some of whom might never have been to a protest before, some in some parts of the country facing real risk. But maybe that one step will lead to another, to a letter, to a hard conversation, to a big decision, to a run for office, to a new kind of courage. So, questions Passover asks of us each year. What's the narrow place we're in? What are the waters we face now? What does it look like to take one faithful step before the path is clear? Because something in us already knows we can't stay where we are forever. Still, the old story is wise enough to know that leaving is not the same thing as arriving. So that's the last part, the part of Exodus we sometimes forget. The sea crossing is dramatic, but that's just the threshold. After the sea comes the wilderness, 40 long years of it, wandering without a map. And in that wilderness, in this story, the people did what people do. They got scared, they got irritable, they doubted, they complained, they missed what was familiar, even though what was familiar had been harmful to them. They weren't yet ready for the freedom they'd been promised. They didn't yet know that feeling lost would be part of learning a new way to live. That may be the truest part of all of this. They didn't yet know how to live in a new reality. They didn't yet trust each other. They didn't yet know how to trust a path. And it all sounds a lot like our wilderness right now, living between an old story that wasn't really working anymore and a new one we do not yet know how to live. In our wilderness, too, we get scared, irritable, uncertain, and want to look back to a better time. But Passover comes each year, and it is a reminder not to confuse a narrow place with home. It's a reminder that freedom can feel strange at first, and it often begins with a step into waters that have not yet parted. Sometimes it begins with a widening of a view, the loosening of an old assumption, the discovery that what at first looked threatening might in fact be another kind of freedom, freedom from shrinking. And then, after all that, comes the long road, where we people learn slowly and imperfectly how not to live by Pharaoh logic anymore. Fear may still be real, but it doesn't have to rule everything. A road where a wider life becomes possible, even if it's not quite yet clear how to live it. And maybe that's the promise held inside this old story. Not that the road will be easy, not that we'll never get scared or lost, but that the narrow place is not all there is. There's still a sea opening. There's still the step we didn't know we could take. There's still the widening of the heart and more freedom in us than fear might sometimes suggest. So may we pay attention. May we tell the truth. May we take the next step. May we trust that beyond what we can already see, there is still more room to live, more room to love, and more room to be free toward a promised land that we cannot yet fully see. May it be so. Amen. And let us join together in our closing hymn, which is a spiritual born from a people who knew bondage and sang their way toward freedom. It carries longing, courage, and the faith that a better land is possible, even before it can be seen. Please rise in body or in spirit. Hymn number 1018.
Come and go with me to that
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.
May we leave this place with courage for the road, companions for the journey, and room in our hearts for a freedom larger than fear. Go in peace, amen, and blessed be.